On today's episode of The Fool Podcast, I interview Bree Jones. She's a tech anthropologist, and we talk about the ways that the woo-woo spirituality kind of ties in with the brain. We talk about different ways of therapy and how to be successful in your career, manifestation, as well as just being in your truth and authenticity. Thank you for following the journey of The Fool. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Fool. I've got Bree Jones here, who's a tech anthropologist. She's my first guest, other than Brighton, who we miss dearly. I wanted to bring you on the podcast specifically because, we met through work, and I was talking to you, and I think it was like 15 minutes into our conversation, I was like, oh, you need to come on my podcast, which I had, you've got a lot of cards that are trying to speak to you. When's the last time you got a reading?
I think my mom took me to go do one with one of her friends a year ago. I don't go that frequently. My mom's does this frequently. Yeah. She's actually got a psychic fair coming up next week. Oh, cool. But I'm her math, science, logic kid that she is always urging to be more in tune because stuff like that happens.
Well, the thing that I've, experienced, we don't know each other well, but we've chatted a bit. And the thing I've experienced about you is just even though you are logical, you're also incredibly intuitive. And I think that that's rare. And I think that that's really cool. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the pod, is just to kind of talk about the two worlds, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of interconnectedness. And I think that we have a way of, in this world, being okay, well, this is woo-woo-y and this is this, but in reality, it's everything is kind of related in the same. It's just we use different ways to explain it.
Yeah.
And so it's there's, I think, that reel that kind of goes on Instagram that's all the different things that are energy. Mm-hmm. And it's electricity is energy and it moves.
Yeah.
And so do our internal energy, and so it's just kind of different ways of being able to explain.
No, absolutely. I think that's been probably the most predominant theme for my entire life is living in duality.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff, I gravitate toward it, or vice versa, in who I am as a person, in my career, sitting between humanity and technology. And even down to my birth chart, it's very much that way. I mean, so.
I'm curious. I wanted to ask you. So today's a big day in the astrological world.
I'm
which
gonna
is
go
cool.
watch the meteor shower
Are you?
tonight.
Okay, that's why you're going to St. George.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really cool because we don't necessarily. I didn't. When we made this date, we just found the date.
I hadn't even thought about the Poseidon meteor shower at all. But it was what felt right. It wasn't one of the options you gave me, and then I was like, hey, what about?
And honestly, so today there was a solar eclipse, there's a meteor shower, and it's a new moon, which I love new moons. I love setting intentions. But okay, so let's start out with that and I'll get into the card a little later because I have a little bit of a message, but I want to share it as we get in a little bit. But I kind of want to ask is how do you relate that to the work that you do? You believe in your chart but you also are very logical. How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think the best way I can describe it is when I was younger, I really had a phase where I pushed against a lot of the quote unquote woo-woo stuff that my mom had raised me around because I was that academic kid and it just seemed weird, and I don't know, I wanted to be maybe more respected is what it was when I was younger. So I kicked against it. And I also think I had some experiences that startled me a little bit with dreams I would have or stuff, and I couldn't explain it and I got uncomfortable with it. But what was so funny, exactly. What was so funny about it though is I still couldn't deny certain correlations that I saw, but I wanted to explain it to myself in a way that made me feel a bit more grounded about it. And so when I was younger, I started thinking about the zodiac idea in general. And I said, you know what? If I removed everything that is woo-woo about it, I still can actually buy into it because the feeling that we all have around the beginning of summer is a very different vibe than the feeling we have around the holidays, right? And we learn based on experience. Yep. So a child's born, everything they're experiencing then builds off of, from that point forward. And so I think that can shape a lot of how we perceive ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah.
And then what I do now for work is, as an anthropologist, I'm, studying humans, working in tech and specialized in tech. I study how humans interact with technology. And the most specific part of it is that I work within the idea of mental fitness. So I study the brain a great deal with what I do. And what I think is so interesting is the brain learns and builds the way I kind of described. But when we look at how we experience the world, how we interpret things, and then how we exert energy after we've decided on a decision or interpreted things, that energy has direction, and the interpretation we have, we assign meaning to. And so I think a lot of this stuff that we think is woo-woo actually is rooted in some really true science and mathematical principles. Yeah. And so I don't see them as two separate worlds. I see them as we can describe exactly what's happening, whether we want to say it from a spiritual lens or whether we want to look at, what's the science behind it.
Yeah.
But it's just describing the same things.
It's funny you say this because I am really into Vedic astrology more than I am Western astrology, which for those of you that don't know, Vedic is Hindu astrology, the Hindu religion. Mm-hmm. And they say that they account for planets being a little bit more tilted or shifted than Western does. So there's a little bit of difference. And so in Vedic, I think that I'm a Cancer sun sign, but in Western, I'm a Leo. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because at different periods of the season or in my life, during Leo season, I am through and through a Leo. Like, I just had my birthday and I was
going to say, when was your birthday? We're right around it.
10 birthday party. Like, I swear, anyone that want to do anything that week, I was like, it's my birthday party, birthday this week.
That's very Leo of you.
Very Leo of me. But like in Vedic, I'm a Cancer. But then when I got my Vedic chart read, he was able to see huge life events of mine. And it was so lined up. And even to the point where right now I'm in a very good period in my life. Mm-hmm. Last year, very, very dark period. And nothing has really changed that much.
Right.
Some things have, but it's so interesting how it was like I just was in a dark space for a few years. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden I really feel like I've just come out. Yeah. And my Vedic astrologer would say, yeah, that's because you were in a transformative. And he has all these like explanations and reasons. And I'm not really as into astrology as I into like shadow work and Jungian coaching and stuff. But mm-hmm. I'm like, no, he's so right. I have a reading with him on the 23rd, and I know that I'm going to be like, everything's so great right now. And he's going to be like, I know, it's because of your chart. Yeah. So it's interesting to me. My whole point in saying this is that, I believe like what you're saying is it as much that we're just using Vedic ways to communicate, Western ways to communicate, what actually just is. Mm-hmm. So I am born in August. I am a Leo in Western, and everyone who's like kind of born around me is like pretty similar. Mm-hmm. And so it's more so I think just about the fact that of like, I don't know how to articulate it. It's really hard for me to articulate. I think you did, and all of that is to say that I agree with you. I just think that we can put all this vocabulary to it, but it's not necessarily that that we just as humans love to like be like, this is right and this is wrong. Mm-hmm.
Our brains like literally our brains crave structure, right? So that's why some things seem really intangible and vague to us, and we struggle with that even emotionally. We don't like the uncomfortableness that is limbo. Yeah. Structure makes us feel grounded and centered, and so that's why we create vocabulary and labels around things. But that's fine. We need that structure to try to make sense of the world around us and ourselves, but we shouldn't get so hung up on the framework we designed that we lose touch with the purpose and meaning for it. And what you were saying actually makes me think of a few years ago, I was at a funeral for someone that was really close for me. And I had someone make a comment about how well I knew them. And they were talking about how they didn't realize how many sides of them there were. Yeah. And it wasn't like good, bad side. It was just the idea that humans are so multifaceted. Right. And so we can look at the individual in so many lenses and still be accurate. Yeah. Even if it's a slightly different perception each time. Yeah. And I think that the world's like that too. So
I want to ask you a question specifically around manifestation. Again, another woo-woo word. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of theories on manifestation, but I would kind of like to talk from your perspective about like humans and patterns in the brain and how someone can manifest from maybe a more logical perspective. So those people who are out there that's like, because I'll kind of add something else to it. I've had people tell me, you can't just like put something out there and like sit back. And I'm like, well, no, certain things do take work. But actually, I have said things like, I remember a couple years ago, one of the coolest things, I was working for this company and I was like, I remember just thinking, I've been working so hard. I'm so tired. I want a massage. And instead of going and buying the massage, I said, you know what, universe? I would love for you to give me a massage. I'm going to test this out. Mm-hmm. Forgot about it, didn't think about it. 3 days later, my VP of sales gave me like this funny fake like best event person ever award and a gift card to a spa for a massage. And I was like, holy shit. And I didn't do anything. I literally didn't do anything. So I think this is a 2-part question. Yeah. I think one, like how could you explain something like that from a logical perspective? But then also maybe we can dive into after that about how can you actually tangibly change your life through your thoughts. Yeah.
It's funny you made it a 2-part question because as you were talking, I had a 2-part way of looking at this to fundamentally understand it. One would be the neuroscience, and this is very grounded and evidence-based, which is to say that certain ways that we choose to behave or believe within ourselves will have an effect on how we live and how we enjoy our life and the things that happen. And so like the idea of affirmations, that's been, there's been studies done to disprove the effectiveness of that. And that sounds funny because some people have great success with it and other people actually get worse. Yeah. The difference is not necessarily the words they say, but their belief in them to be possible. Mm. And so there's a lot of different avenues I can go down with this, but what I will say is thinking within possibility is a really powerful state because it's not blind optimism and it's not faking it. Your brain and your gut and everything knows when you're faking it. Yeah. So if you say an affirmation that you don't believe in fundamentally, it's not going to have a positive effect on you, right?
I want to add something. Mm-hmm. I remember I was dating someone a while ago and I said to them, I love going and looking at big houses because it just like motivates me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and I want to create this program for children to go and like see outside of their scope and their sphere so they can see what's possible for them. And he was like, I don't like that. It discourages me. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. Because you're right. It's like that's what you're saying about the affirmations. It's like, for me, that works. Yeah. Because I can see what's possible and I'm really driven and determined. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to go get it. But some people are like, that you're showing me what I don't have and it's making me feel like shit.
Right. And I think that's the thing is it's not a lack of desire for the item itself, but what that highlights is the foundation of belief that someone is holding. And that's not to say that if something discourages you that you're in the wrong and you need to change something, but experiences inform us, and emotions inform us. For a long time, I mean, how much time passed before mental health was even considered legitimate, right? And even now, people almost feel like emotions are almost woo-woo themselves, to be honest, right? Totally. But the thing is when we experience an emotion, whether it's rooted in truth or not, because they don't have to be, they're not correlated. Totally. Our body still has a chemical reaction within us based on that emotion that we're feeling. We still have to physiologically experience that emotion, whether it's factual or not. And so a belief around what motivates us or what we hope for or what we think is possible is rooted in a process that actually has a physical effect on our body. So that's all like the internal science. Yeah. So what you believe is truly possible for your future and you confirm that possibility either through logical processes of saying, yes, I've seen this happen to other people, thus I know it is possible. Yes. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to plan this out, and I'm going to get really clear about it.
That's me.
And you structure it, right? If you are rooted in maybe a fear of, I've seen this not work out for people and I'm worried I'm going to be in that category, then a lot of the lens you're approaching everything to is based on that. So when we say something to our brain like, life sucks, nothing works out for me, your brain's like, oh, okay, good, good to know. Let me start to confirm that for you by making that our structure and our framework. So what I think is interesting is our mind is not separated from our body, and our thoughts are not who we are. We're informed by it, and we can actually design and articulate and structure these things and how we experience life. So that's the internal part. There is a lot of science-based evidence that's been well studied and peer reviewed to show that how we conduct ourselves internally does reflect our external experience in life. Now, where I will bridge it based on my studies and work with people and just, in general, a lot of theories that I have is you can look at the brain itself with all of its chemicals and electrical circuits and things like that as very similar to our universe, right? It's just the same processes in a different, span or so. And so if we think about, I have a thought, and then my entire brain and then body starts to shape around that because of that energy and that focus and that lens. Why not, if our universe also is kind of like a brain, when we have a thought, maybe us ourselves are putting that thought into that electrical circuit that is the brain of the universe. Why wouldn't the rest of it start to restructure around that if there is clarity and focus in there so that it can bring that to fruition?
Yeah, totally. No, that's wonderfully said. And you brought up something that made me so now is time to talk about the cards. So it's interesting because the two that I want to focus on is the Five of Wands, and then the Ten of Pentacles came out over the Five of Wands. And the Five of Wands is kind of like challenging periods, and then Ten of Pentacles is the most success that you can receive in the deck, to a certain extent, because it's like the pentacles are the material world and 10 is the completion. And so I want to ask you a couple questions in regard to this, because I know that you're very successful in your career and it's very inspiring. And so being a biracial woman in Utah, which is kind of difficult, just because of the culture that we have here. How have you been able to overcome and work through a lot of your thought? Because we talked a little bit about your childhood, and I come from a little bit of a rocky childhood as well, differences, right? But, I would love to know your perspective of like how you were able to change some of your thoughts and projections too, because I'm sure you'd walk in a room and be like, I'm a Black woman, biracial, however you, I don't know if these men are going to respect me, but they do, I'm sure there's some that, and I'd just love your experience. I'd love to know your experience and your thoughts on that and how you've been able to overcome any obstacles or limiting beliefs around that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I really think I'm like the opposite of everything standard in Utah.
Yeah, and I love it.
it's being female in business. It's being biracial. Yeah. It's being bisexual. It's being not religious.
When I saw your LinkedIn, I was like, oh, she's cool as fuck. Because someone recommended you to me, and I was like, oh, we'd be friends. So yeah.
So it's like everything you would think of as the standard mold for Utah, I don't fit into, right? And yet I've loved building my career here, and I actually think that building my career here was arguably easier than it would have been anywhere else. I think that it's not so much other people as how you adapt to whatever the circumstances, right? So I think that having uniqueness became a superpower.
Wow.
I didn't have, being unique or being the outsider, you can see as I'm the outsider.
Yeah.
That's not how I saw it. I saw it as I don't have much competition.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's like the same thought. It's just a completely different reframe.
Totally.
And being an anthropologist, you start to actually train yourself to think that way, because you have to, it's not a matter of I'm going to try not to be biased. Actually, in anthropology, we structure things around the idea that I am inherently biased, but I'm going to be self-aware about that and constantly challenge my own thinking. And so I think of things even just linguistically. If we call someone selfish, we know that that has a negative connotation to it. But if we say that someone is good at boundary setting, all of a sudden that has a positive connotation, right? It might be the same exact trait.
It's the same thing. That's what they teach you in shadow work,
Yeah. So when I looked at things and I'm like, okay, I'm the outsider or I don't have much competition, that was the internal compass, right? The direction of I'm going to choose to go this way and be creative about how I do this and how I approach it. But then you look at the motivating factors, right? I did kind of have some rough things in my childhood that could have easily turned me into a statistic because a statistic is based on a commonality. And that didn't happen. But I will say that my 20s were arguably way more rough than my childhood. Not because I didn't have success, but I was dealing with a marriage and a dynamic that went so beyond not getting along, right? It became dangerous and dark and scary, and I had 2 children that it's my one job to protect them, right? And so I think that this kind of goes back to that belief, that foundational belief we were talking about before, because if you say an affirmation and you don't believe it, it almost has a negative effect on you. You don't like it, right? But if you genuinely believe something, then it starts to shape how you react. It's the difference between a need and a want. And so I think I had this creative way of framing how I saw myself in the world, for one, and success was not a want for me. It was a need because I had clarity on what that success was going to be used for in my life. It wasn't like I want to be good at my job and have success in some vague way. It was I need to earn a certain amount of money to get out of a situation or to reach toward protecting my kids more, or to create as much distance between my family and hardship so that we can actually enjoy life. And that was important to the point where it was a need for me. So I think having those 2 things, you need to have the internal guiding compass, and then you need to have the clarity on exactly what and why and how you're going to go about doing something. Because if you don't need it, it's not going to have the grounding it needs to be sustainable or successful.
So some of what you're saying reminds me of, we've talked about shadow work, but so a need is sometimes also kind of like an ego state, because it's a survival state. It's like and that's honestly what has helped us evolve as humans. People think that ego is such like a negative thing because of books and stuff like that. But ego, I think there's also another book that like ego is not your enemy, right? It's just really creates the armor and what you need in order to gain something or to get something in your life. But then sometimes those how do you say, patterns or beliefs that got you there don't serve you anymore. So let's say that now that you've made it to the place of success and you don't need that anymore, how do you maintain and stay in that energy?
I think what's really interesting is, especially in Western culture, we are taught to put our heads down and to grind, and we almost feel shame around the idea of relaxing or enjoyment or anything like that, right? That's what we are taught and have almost beat into us in a lot of ways, right?
The hustle culture, especially in the United States.
And when we look to maybe improve our lives, it's how do I improve it moderately or little bits at a time. And when we look at things like just feeling tired all the time, feeling burnout, we think, okay, I just need to sleep more, or maybe I just need to have this radical change, hence midlife crises or something. But I mean, the science comes back in here too. Burnout is not a lack of sleep, but we have multiple batteries of energy. It's not just our physical, it's our mental, it's our emotional, it's our spiritual batteries. And when one of those is depleted continually, that's where burnout starts to happen. And so I think that we initially talked about like, okay, how am I going to approach needing to be successful, and why am I going to be so ambitious and work that hard, right? And then how is that achievement going to actually happen, right? But then it's okay, I've done that. What's the point of continuing and without getting burned out? And there's a quote, and I wish I remembered exactly who said it, and it's kind of escaping me right now, but it's about that humans could endure suffering if they learned to find purpose in it.
Yeah.
Right. So that, like I was saying at the very beginning, so much of my life has been about duality. And so when I look at my career, especially considering I'm an advocate of mental fitness, a lot of people are like, oh, so you must be like super healthy and have all these great relationships and be like totally zen all the time. And I'm like, oh, fuck no.
No. Yeah.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Mental fitness is a practice. And I made something that absolutely saved my life, my career as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm not above it having reached an end of a journey. There is no end to this journey. It's perpetual. And so I'm right there in the trenches with everyone, still practicing these things and finding purpose in sharing the hardships that I've gone through in order to lighten someone's load or to, even just share camaraderie in that. Yeah. So I think that there's not just purpose and fulfillment, but true vitality in this continuation of being exactly honest with yourself and driven to learn and grow amongst everything else that's given to you.
I find that when I'm inspired, I will work so much harder, and I won't even feel burnt out. I won't feel exhausted if I'm doing things that I love. Right now I'm planning this big summit, and it's stuff that I love to do. And so it gives me a lot of joy and excitement, and I feel like I'm in a really good space right now. But there's been times in my life where I've worked on things that I don't like, I don't want to be doing, and every day I'm drained. What is that?
Yeah.
What is your brain doing? The
neuro...
Or when you're in love, everything's great.
Everything's
but when you're
magical.
Heartbroken, everything's awful.
Yeah. The science behind it is, again, I used to hate the phrase, your emotions are valid, or their emotions are valid. I'm like, they are wrong, because I was like coming from it from facts, right? I was in this reasonable mind state of, they're factually wrong, how could it be valid? And I didn't want to be a jerk. I still felt compassion, and I felt sorry that they're experiencing that. I wanted to help, but validity to me seemed like a stretch. The thing is, you are physically experiencing those emotions, right? Yeah. So when you're like on top of the world, it is having this chemical, electrical experience in your body. And when that's the opposite, it's the opposite, right? So when we look at work and when we feel depleted versus when we feel invigorated, it's those batteries, right? It's your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual batteries. And energy is something that we can change and morph. Like, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, right? And we're also focused on things like time management and productivity. We can't really change time, but we can change our energy. Yeah. And I also think of it similarly to school. I ask most kids, like, hey, is school your most favorite thing in the whole world? No. Yeah. Most times they're like, oh, I have to go to school. I'm going to play sick. I don't want to go. Yeah. That's actually incredibly strange, and we should all be really concerned about that. Our mind and body lights up in positive activity and enjoyment in solving problems and in being curious. Yeah. So if we're not having that response to something's wrong there, because we're not too tired to work well into the night or into the early hours of the morning and get up early and be so excited to do something. We're not too tired for that. But we're uninspired. We might be drained if it's not physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. And so that energy fluctuates. Yeah. And if we don't have all four of those at a high level, we're not going to feel very good.
I love that you say this. So when I was a kid, vulnerability, I was told I had a learning disability because I have really bad ADHD. I think now it's more ADD than ADHD, but when I was a kid, it was ADHD. And then they put me on Ritalin, and then I got depressed, then they put me on Prozac, and then I think by the time I was like 12, I had a friend, and she was like, why do you take that stuff? I was like, I don't know. And I was kind of living with her family at the time, so I was like, I'm just going to stop taking it. And I was fine, because I think a lot of that stuff is also situational, right? But I've been thinking as an adult that sometimes I do have a hard time focusing, but also the way in which I operate and I work, is actually very beautiful. And so when I was a kid, I wasn't very good at like sitting down and listening to lectures, but what I was really good at was making friends at new schools and collaborating and doing, you know, like creative projects and things like that. And it's funny because when they told me I had a learning disability, they were like, well, you had to move around a lot and things like that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's why. And now as I'm older, I'm starting to think, I actually don't think that was why. I think having a little bit of an unstable childhood can affect your learning, but I actually just think that I was put in the wrong spaces. I wasn't put in any spaces to be able to learn in a way that I like to learn. And as I'm an adult and I have a lot more autonomy in my role, you know, a higher position, with most companies, I'm able to just kind of be like, this is the way I work, and they let me because I'm really good at events. And I feel that it would be great as a society if we could think and speak to that more, because I think there's a lot more people who are like me that are medicating because they're like, because of the current societal structures that we have. But actually, if we were more so living a different way, we wouldn't have to medicate. That there's not something wrong with us, but that it just, society isn't set up in a way for us to be able to thrive.
Right. Society is not set up in a way for a female, minority, bisexual, non-religious person to succeed in Utah culture and environment. It's not set up for me to thrive, and yet, you know, I've been really what I feel like very lucky, but it's lucky is not the right word, but that's what I'm going to use for general context, because I figured out a way to stop trying to play the game the way that everyone else was making it work for them, and start living in a way that was more honest to me. That was exactly what it was, like, genuinely. And the funny thing is, I feel like that's the idea of success too, right? We are trained to see it in such a hierarchy of, you know, you start here at the bottom and you work your way up. And the problem is, I've had a lot of people accuse me of being a bit arrogant sometimes, and I actually understand why. It's that duality, and yes, that term has a negative connotation, right? But I know why they're approaching it that way, because I will be so candid about, you know, the income I make or what my job title is or whatever, or the success I have. And that does something of feeling, okay, well, if she's like this and being so open about it, is that bragging? Is that, you know, whatever it is?
That's people's shadows. Like, when people don't feel comfortable speaking about themselves, and other people come around and speak so confidently about themselves because of their own discomfort, they project something onto you. And the work there for that person is to, for me, if someone were to come to me, a client, and say, this person's triggering me because they're doing all the things you just listed, I would say, well, what's so wrong about talking about how much money you make? What's so wrong about boosting yourself and all of those different things? And then that's the root of the fear that holds them back. And then the practice is, how can you talk about yourself more? How can you, you know, boost yourself up more? And then that builds confidence in someone. And so I think that's awesome. And
well, that's exactly why I do it too. It's because it's not it's about me type of a thing, because I love getting just past that accusation, just beyond it, because then you find, oh, why are you doing this? I'm like, because I wish I had someone who did this for me, so I didn't have to figure out so much on my own from scratch. But I'm blatant and objective about it, because I'm also that way about things I'm not good at. The thing is, in our society, me being like a, you know, chief experience officer at a tech company and having this like longer tech anthropology, you know, career, and like advising governments and like making like a large, you know, amount of income or something, that seems like this pinnacle of success way up the ladder, right? And it's not a ladder by any means, because if someone, you know, has a real conversation with me without that push-pull of ego and insecurity, I will be the first to say, I would be a terrible employee at 99% of jobs. Like, I would have so much anxiety around being like a receptionist, for example. I have so much respect. Because the idea of answering the phone and you don't know who's on the other end and you just have to coordinate. Oh my gosh. Like, no, I wouldn't be good at it. Something structured where I have to clock in and clock out. I'm terrible. I'm so terrible at it. And so I am so grateful that I work with a team who acknowledges playing to people's strengths rather than trying to forcibly improve people's weaknesses. Because if I want to work, between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. because that's my hours of inspiration, I can do that. And the lack of structure, but trusting me as an individual to, fill in with the company with my strengths and what I can do has worked so well and allowed me to be my version of success.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that what it looks like is just because I leaned into me, not because I leaned into the structure around me.
And I love that. And it's very inspiring to me because I'm very similar to you. And I think that I've embraced that the past 6 months to a year, where I've just and especially the past 6 months in this current position, where I'm just this is who I am. I'm going to get my job done. I'm going to do a really good job, but this is just the way that I work. I can't sit in this office all day long. I'll come in, but I'm going to go home. I'm going to do some things. I'm going to hop back online. And I think that with some organizations, when you do that, and I'm grateful because I'm in a position, where I can, and some people aren't, but you show them that it's no, I can still do my job. It's just a different way than what you guys maybe want it to be. Everyone has a different way of working, and I think that it's good to, promote people's strengths, like you said. And so I find that really inspiring and super cool.
I think we want to do that for ourselves, but we fear the risk and implications that others will bring to us, because there's only so much in our control. And I think the thing is evaluating your priorities to the point where it is more important for you to be honest with yourself than whatever outcome may happen. And the funny, ironic thing of life and universe and energy, and however you want to look at it, when you accept what your priorities are, things happen to align for the way they work out, and it just works.
It's crazy. I agree with you. So recently I've been really unapologetic. I was made a non-negotiable list. I was I'm gonna have a conversation with every friend that I feel I have any sort of anything, and just express myself, and I'm just gonna be so in my truth that if anything doesn't align, it can fall away, and whatever is meant to align will, and it has. It's I had a difficult conversation with a friend, but I was if this ruins our friendship, I'm ready to allow it to, because this is my truth, and it didn't. It made us closer, and we both understood each other, and I think that so many people operate from a scarcity mindset because they're afraid. And I think fear just holds you back. I think fear is a distraction. I think if we put it in religious terms, fear is the devil. And it really is such a hindrance. And if you can learn to, I always say that it's the boogeyman under your bed, and if you face your fears, it's looking under your bed and seeing there's nothing there. And when you see there's nothing there, then you can go bravely, right?
Well, referring back to the cards that we got, where there was that 10 of Pentacles, which is what we've been kind of talking about, but also that 5 of Wands. And, I have a close circle of people who know what my life has been for the last, my entire life, for the last 10 years, or specifically the last 2 years. And I think when people don't know that, they assume, okay, well, easy for her to say her life is easy. And the people who find out what I'm actively, even right now to this day, dealing with, they're how are you okay? Literally, how are you not falling apart at the seams, checking yourself onto a grippy sock vacation or something? How are you even functioning? And it's from that idea of radical honesty, starting within yourself, breeds radical acceptance. And you know what? Ultimately, that's what leads to radical success too. So it's it's not I'm end game. Right now, I'm going through such a massive amount of hardship and fear and anxiety and just difficulty around things that I don't feel I have a ton of control of. Fighting uphill battles that are so deeply important to me, and it's frickin' hard. It's hard right now. But at the same time, I'm also experiencing such radical success and love and a sense of inner peace despite everything in extreme chaos right now. I have extremes on either end, and such a calm, grounded centerness inside, and then that's how you navigate anything in life, really.
I think that's beautiful, and honestly, it's very admirable. And.
sorry, it's like side note from the pod. I just think about like, and we can continue now, but I think about when I was in a really bad relationship and I was leaving that relationship, how much my world was crumbling. And how I remember I would just be at work and I would go into the bathroom and bawl. And by the end of the day, I had no makeup on. I cried all my makeup off in the bathroom. But this was pre-COVID. So it was like I couldn't go home. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I just remember being in such a difficult time. That was a very big, like, tower moment, dark night of the soul period of my life. And fortunately have never felt that low again since then. But what do you think? I mean, when big things like that happen in our life, they can be so consuming. And I'm curious if you have any advice for people that may be going through difficult times right now of how to create that centeredness and that balance. And you said authenticity, and I think that that's really important. I think that when you shine a light on your trials or your shadows or things like that, then it does something, right? But I'm curious if you have anything else to add.
Yeah. There's a kind of mental exercise that I have done and practiced, and I started doing it before I even knew there was a name for it. But there's a name for it, luckily. So it's something that people can go and research. But I'm actually a big believer in Stoicism.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So because the hardships, especially in the last couple of years that I've had to face, were not... And maybe this is a blessing, or it's not easy. Either way, whatever it is, it was these things that I could not control, nor are they things that I necessarily brought on myself, but they felt so big and consuming and overwhelming because of the dynamics of them. And I was crippled with fear and overwhelm, like just paralyzed by it. So I have totally been there. And it's not that I haven't risen up and been resilient in the past, but this was another level of stuff that I was like, I can't, right? So I was in that spot. And then it comes the practice of Stoicism was like, okay, and what if the worst happens?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I shied away from it. It was...
You embraced it.
Yeah. In my head, I walk through, I'm like, and what if that happens? Yep. Let's imagine it. And then I walked myself through that worst case scenario and I sat with it. I'm like, are you okay? I'm like, no, that sucked. Okay, and then what? And then you keep pushing and you keep questioning. Okay, push more until you're like, okay, and what if that's your life? Then that's your life. Yeah. And it's that radical acceptance.
Yes, yeah, totally.
So it's like, don't feel the anxiety and the fear and just sit there.
Yeah.
Move through it.
Yeah.
Question it. Push against it until you get to the other end and you're like, okay, now what? And then you realize, yeah, you know what? Worst case scenario, rock bottom, everything is completely destroyed around me and it's just, rubble. Mm-hmm. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Now what? And then you get to that rebuilding phase and you're like, I've got this, right?
I'm curious. I want to know, your thoughts on therapy. And particularly, I did talk therapy for a while and it helped. It helped me understand, like, I remember my therapist when I was leaving my relationship was like, do you know what, like, gaslighting is? Like, do you know what, like, narcissism is? I'm like, no, I have no idea. Like, obviously.
Let's talk about it. You actually know a lot. You just don't know you know.
Actually, you're being gaslit super bad. And I can see it, but you can't. But that helped for a while. Mm-hmm. And then I got my coach, it stopped working. And then I was like, okay, I need something else. And then I started doing shadow work and got my coaching certification. And then I was doing all the shadow work and I was like, okay, I need something else. And then I discovered somatic therapy and I was like, oh, I am like, that is what I feel like really helped me tap into my intuition, because she would slow me down, which I do, my energy goes like, da, 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 da. But she would slow me down and be like, what are you feeling in your body? Mm-hmm. And it got me out of my head and into my body. And I tell people all the time, I say this funny things. Like I say, like, I asked my house and my house told me this, or I asked my body and my body said no. And I'm sure people are like, what the fuck? But it's true.
Yeah.
But somatic therapy helped me really learn how to, like, get in my body. And so I'm curious, like, being an anthropologist, what your thoughts are on therapy, and if maybe therapy works better, like different therapy works better for different times, or if there's one modality that you think is the best. Just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for therapy. And it's funny because I'm a tech anthropologist, my two tech specialties are gamification and artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And working for a mental fitness company where we use artificial intelligence to, have like an app that guides people through the daily habits and practices of mental fitness, the immediate thought is, are you trying to replace therapists? And I love those conversations because no, we're not. We actually are so compatible. And I work with a lot of mental health clinicians. And we talk about the idea that mental fitness, if someone's going to therapy, is the work that they do in between sessions.
Totally.
Right?
I agree completely.
Yeah.
I was using ChatGPT to move through some really difficult times, like maybe a year ago, and I still needed my therapist because there's nothing like someone holding space for you. Being able to break down and just have someone hold space for you is unmatched.
Right.
And but then also ChatGPT actually helped me to really see some of my patterns and cycles. And I was shocked by like, wow, you're really like on to something here. It was able to kind of see, I went through this huge groundbreaking experience where I started realizing that I was just reliving my childhood relationship with my parents in actual relationship and how much of a correlation there was. And ChatGPT helped me recognize those patterns, but the therapist held space for me. I think ChatGPT actually helped me uncover some things that I was never able to uncover in therapy, but then I could take it to therapy, and that was really helpful.
Yeah. I love that you brought up ChatGPT because actually my team and I built the company that we have because Harvard Review came out and said, ChatGPT, the number one use for it is for therapy-related type issues. Yeah. And then the problem, what we thought of people who have been like executives in tech for years, were like, oh, crap, that's not good. Because, ChatGPT and a lot of general AI platforms are not designed for that purpose in a safe way or a like evidence-based informed way. So we actually wanted to work with clinicians to do something that was non-clinical, that is that work that supports what you do in therapy too. And as far as like modalities, I don't actually have any one modality that I think is a good thing for everyone, but I do have my own personal favorites because they've helped in different aspects. Like when I was going through like extreme crisis, DBT all the way. And one of my best friends, DBT, so dialectical behavioral therapy.
And how's that different from like EMDR?
Yeah. So dialectical behavioral therapy was initially kind of created for like borderline personality disorder because people who have that are sitting in extremes all the time. So it's very similar to when you're in a crisis. I mean, you are in survival state and it is intense all the time. So DBT has actually become something that's really popular, not just for anyone with borderline, but anybody, right? And what it teaches is a lot of radical acceptance and a lot of immediate tools to calm your nervous system, right? So you are having a panic attack, hold an ice cube, right? Because that actually has a physical effect on your body.
Okay, cool.
Talk therapy, that's CBT. And so you have cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what talk therapy is. And so that's really great. I also really love ACT, which is, you focus on what are your values in life. And so you clear everything, all these decisions and pressures that you have in your life, and you just say, who am I? What do I value? And once you figure out what your values are, everything that you respond to in your life is a question of, does it align with my values? I
love that you said that because earlier this year I narrowed down my values, and I also did something with friendships. I have a lot of people in my community and my space. I have so many good friends. It's so like such a blessing and so amazing, but sometimes it's overwhelming because I really connect with people on such a deep level. So then I'm connected to all these people. So
That's cool, though.
It is way cool, but sometimes I'm like, like where do I put my energy?
We have capacity.
I have to. And I'm also a projector, so I need a lot of rest. And so what I did is I said, who are my 5 just like best friends, like the people that also show up for me, that pour into me, who just like, who are those 5 people, and try to prioritize those relationships a little bit more. And then when you can, like, and it feels fun and you have the energy, then do the other things.
It's that thing, you're not managing your time, you're managing your energy.
And it's like, and who am I around that I feel like full after? And I just made a list of like my top 5 values and my top 5 friends and then the top 5 projects that I wanted to focus on. And it really changed things for me, because when I went to make decisions, especially with having ADD, I was able to go back to that and then ask my body. I don't know if you ever do which we should talk about that with the brain. What is it called? When muscle testing. And, I would do muscle testing and then I would make decisions based off of that. But I love that you say that. But I do want to talk about muscle testing. Are you familiar with it? And how do you think that corresponds with the brain? What's happening
Are
there?
you talking about things where if you say a truth and you try to move someone's hands, they won't move. But if you're lying, it's easy to move it, right?
Correct.
I actually love that as an example of what intuition is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes our reasoning, which is what makes us as humans, so interesting as creatures on this earth, is our ability to reason, right? But sometimes it gets in the way of our natural instincts and ability to listen to that, and our intuition, and those intangible, vague things that make our reasonable brain uncomfortable.
And also, just to add to that a little bit, so has society, because society's wanted us to follow. It's easier to control population that just follows as opposed to uses their own internal compass or guide. So,
Well, we can't pass along our intuition to someone. So how do we articulate with as much conviction to someone else what we are perceiving intuitively? That is hard, and it's hard to have a collective society. And so I don't even necessarily shame that society has shaped around structure, but I think we need to be aware that that's why it's shaped that way for collaboration, but it is not the only truth.
Awareness and discernment.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that the muscle testing is a really great tangible way to ask what your intuition understands and to get around that cognitive reasoning that sometimes becomes an obstacle for us. So it's kind of like, should I do this? Muscle test that. Right? Because that's a direct, tangible tap into that intuitive part of you that already knows. I love that. Okay, I think we're coming up on time, but it would not be I could not let you walk out of here without talking about AI. So I just want a little bit of just what do you feel like the future is of AI and your perspective on it, and just everything that we're kind of going through right now, this shift, and it's a very historical time, right? And I do think that it kind of went like this, and it's evening out a little bit, and people are kind of calming down a little. But I'm just curious about what you think about, AI and the future of humanity integrating it. That's a broad question. It's yes and no, because what you're really asking me, quite honestly, has nothing to do with AI. You're asking me about, do I have faith in humanity?
Wow.
Right. That's genuinely what you're asking me. And the reason for it is because AI is a technology that will force us to be more intuitive or not, to be more human or to not. Honestly, how it is as a technology, right? The way it's different is a standard software is someone goes in there and programs, codes it in, says, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. It's very structured. Kind of like we talked about with society, right? And AI, the way that it's designed, does not have that structure. And I think that's why it can sometimes feel scary. Because we talk about a term called hallucinating with AI. If we ask AI a question and it spits some bogus, random, out of left field answer, we're like, what the heck? It's tripping. It's hallucinating is what we say, right? Here's the actual science behind, or the math behind it. It's always hallucinating. And that's almost a scarier thought to people. When you ask it something and it gives you a correct answer, it doesn't know that it gave you a correct answer. It doesn't. It's hallucinating all the time because it's built to reason and to infer. So it's not this structured, 1 + 1 is 2. It's let's think and let's calculate probabilities and let's infer what the probable answer might be. There's so many variables and intangibilities. And I think the thing is when we look at, can I trust AI? Can I not? Is AI going to be a hardship in my life or is it not? It's not about that. It's about, if you can trust AI, it's not about the technology, is do you trust the humans that are building that particular AI platform, or the way that those humans are deploying that AI, right? Will AI be a hardship in your life or will it not? What you're really asking is, do I have the internal groundedness to be open to flexibility and to reinvention within my own self in life? Or do I want to remain fixed because that's where I have found comfort?
Safety.
Yeah. So I love AI because I tend to look at it from a positive lens, but it's not because there's not so much duality in it. There is. And so when people ask, is it harmful or is it beneficial? Yes, it is. It's in equal parts.
Yeah.
It is equal in both its harm as well as its benefit.
But so is everything. Like if you think about food, it's harmful and beneficial.
Exactly.
Everything. And I think that's why moderation and balance is so important. And I like to think of AI as like, it has the potential and possibility of being able to make our life simpler in ways so that we can go back to the ways of being human from the beginning.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And we shouldn't be doing some of these jobs, or we shouldn't be doing some of these things. And we should go back to creativity and community and gardens and all of these different things, and we can have AI focus on that stuff while we focus on this and coming back to what it means to being human.
I remember years ago I was doing an interview for a magazine with a bunch of other people that, you know, they had curated as, you know, quote unquote AI experts, right? And I was the only AI expert in the room. We were talking about, you know, art generation and how it's going to just, you know, remove creative jobs and displace all these workers. And I know that has had some real impacts in the world. But I had such a conviction. I'm like, no. It cannot be creative. It's mathematically sequencing things, but I think that creativity and genuinely human things, imperfect human things, are going to be such a commodity in the world that AI creates. And so when we have jobs that are built by a highly structured society to do grunt work, that is not what our human design was ever meant to do.
100%.
So if you feel displaced, yeah, you are. But it's because, you know, whether you want to say it's the technology, or maybe the technology has given birth because we've decided in the universe that we're ready for the next step. And that is the entire universe, and the technology that is being produced is reshaping our world to encourage us to get more into our human being and to see what that is.
It's funny you had those discussions years ago, because what's happening is a lot of people are getting backlash and criticism for making like events, because I'm in events, making event flyers with AI, or doing this with AI, or writing books with AI, and illustrating and all those different things. And
it's seen as cheap. And it's not valued anymore.
And it's not
Where
valued.
A few years ago, they just thought it was the ruin.
And the thing is what's funny, I actually reposted this because I was like, yes, but it was like, stop using AI to make art, use your trauma like the rest of us. And it's like, it's true. And I think that we are going to value what's real, and then all of the other stuff AI can do, but it allows us to be more creative and display that, and it's going to make real life experiences, just as COVID did this. The whole wellness industry and community and the woo-woo world skyrocketed after COVID. And you know why? It was because we were isolated. And you know what happens? The pendulum swings. And so I feel like that's what's happening. But one last question, just to wrap up. What, in summary, what do you feel like the next, let's say 5 years from now, where do you see us with AI and just as
I
see population?
Extremes having more extreme, because that's what we do as humans. It's not because that's what needs to be done, but we decide to be polarized because there are always going to be those that see, feel, and then act from a foundation of fear. And they can't get out of that. And then there's going to be people who see, feel, and act from a foundation of belief and possibility and groundedness. And so
they're just gonna,
it just widens. And so what I do as a tech anthropologist, as I'm studying how to best encourage, you know, innovation of technology to help humanity, I look at, you know, technology, AI being very amongst that, done well and utilized well, should encourage our humanity, should uplift our humanity, should amplify our humanity. And so if you ever are in a question of, should I take that job? should I learn this skill? Should I apply this? Should I be using this on my phone? It's just a matter of, is this pushing you toward more genuinely human traits and habits, or is it pushing you into being more structured and robotic?
Yeah.
Right. So if you feel more alive, and I think the best word to use is, if you feel more vitality and less burnout, lean into it, because that's going to lead to success, even in a material way, 5-10 years down the road.
Yeah. And I would say, honestly, in summary, if I've learned anything from this episode, it's like, shine light on your darkness, show your authenticity, find the environments that you thrive in, and follow the spark, follow the excitement, and to continue. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so great. I'm like, we could just sit here and talk all day.
It's my favorite subject.
And it has been such a pleasure, and I'm really glad you agreed to this. And thank you.